On the road again, flying solo again, but angry as usual because the media has to pick on Israel, has to make her look as bad as possible, and even in a story that should get some sympathy, a way to destroy it to no end. Hi, everybody. David Solomon back here. Stuart Brisgell is out. It is a Wednesday. And normally he's here with me on the Rat Network, where we dive into these raw, unfiltered issues spanning the news, pop culture, politics, so much more. Whether we're dissecting today's absurdity, today's deep-seated issues, we keep it real. And this is one that just doesn't want to go away. So sit back as today I take another shot at the media here on the Rat Network. Well, folks, I simply am at loss of words. And the loss of the words goes back to what occurred this past weekend when this great news. If you woke up on the weekend, you heard the good news that 4 hostages were returned back to their homes. They were rescued in this incredibly daring mission by the Israeli armed forces. They were rescued from the horrors of captivity for close to 9 months. Now, if you just read the headlines, it went from everywhere from Hamas released 4 hostages to Israel rescued 4 hostages. But underneath it, Israel killed in the process between 100 and 200 people. Murder, massacres, genocide. Again, these words thrown around like they mean nothing. And the scary part is that the facts don't matter to the media. One more time. Because all it is about how to make Israel look as bad as possible in this war. I don't have to, really, I shouldn't have to. That on October 7th, over 200 people were kidnapped, along with the 1,200 murdered, raped, burned, you name it. I mean, I don't have to go through that all over again. You've heard me say it so many times. But here we are once again, where what she's supposed to do, bring home her people. Bring home the hostages. Bring him home. That's what they promised since October 7th. They're going to bring them home. Now, if you again just read the headlines, you're blaming Israel now for this unnecessary killing, Israel being genocidal, and the left has lost its mind yet again. From Mark Ruffalo, that piece of garbage actor who's gotta hate it in Israel, to you name it, on the politicians on the left. Blaming former MSNBC and current MSNBC people, blaming Israel for yet again no care for Palestinian lives. But did anybody bother to go one step past the headlines and see what really happened? Right? Daring daytime rescue. Israel should have been more careful. I'm trying to understand something here, okay, folks? Israel found its 4 hostages in 2 apartments. Noel Wamogi, the famous quote-unquote young lady who was captured and was on a motorcycle driving into Gaza, and the world saw the picture. Horror on her face. She was taken into an apartment in one building. And about 200 meters away, the other 3 men were in another building. The Israelis were able to get into the first apartment. Only one kept her under gun. And of course, the world blames Israel for shooting an innocent woman. I'm not so sure how innocent she can really be, keeping a captive individual. And I heard today someone say to me, but you know, David, that one probably didn't have a choice. Then why is she shooting at Israeli soldiers? If she really did care that Noel Mogi should live, and she shouldn't be, let her go. But instead she shot back at the IDF. And then you have what occurred afterwards with the other 3 men. Not 1, not 5, but dozens were firing at Israel, the Israeli forces, who came in to rescue these individuals. That's right, dozens. And of course, this is in an apartment building. Of course, this is in a residential neighborhood. And of course, these are, quote, civilians? Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. But you're firing bullets and rocket propelled grenades at Israel and should do nothing with the IDF in a civilian neighborhood. Of course, there are going to be casualties. Of course, they're going to be wounded because the life doesn't matter. But Israel's to be blamed. Genocidal. UN resolutions, call it whatever you want. Israel should be blamed for wanting to bring home her own people. You know, it was interesting. One of the people who were keeping them on captive, an Al Jazeera journalist. That was classic. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Al Jazeera. Should they be allowed still to broadcast from Israel? Not me. I throw them out. To allow a journalist to do that, and we've seen Al Jazeera rode in with the Palestinians on October the 7th. Nobody said boo because they're media. Al Jazeera blamed Israel for everything that turned out to be false. And now this, a journalist keeping one of the hostages guarded in an apartment. You scratch. I'll go a step further, folks. The interesting thing about this rescue mission is that, there was one casualty on the Israeli side. And Israel took it in the mouth that they lost a soldier. And it's heartbreaking for them. 100 and 200 people that died. And by the way, once again, we can count bodies lickety-split. Israel said these numbers, once again, are brought to you by whom? The famous Gaza Health Ministry. We're still quoting 36,000 plus, which makes no sense. Even the United Nations said it doesn't make sense anymore. We're still quoting the Gaza Hamas Health Ministry, which is the same thing. Gaza Hamas, Gamas, we should just call them Gamas, whatever. And yet, the world listens to the terrorists. The world will take the word of terrorists over Israel. Now, I spent a good part of my day having this conversation with people and who are asking me, so David, why is the world so against Israel? Why is Israel constantly vilified? And I said, there's only one reason. It's anti-Semitism at it's the one common enemy. From the left to the right, we've talked about this. Doesn't matter. Israel's got to be a scapegoat. Jews have to be a scapegoat. And so as a result, no matter what Israel does, they're in the wrong. When last week the United Nations put Israel on a list of rogue states who kill children who don't, you just equated Israel to Hamas, was the most vile thing. Israel, who's done so much to protect innocent lives, doesn't make a difference. Facts don't matter again. So does this, and then the world points to that the next day, the head of the opposition, Benny Gantz, resigns from the cabinet and we should go to elections. And he wants to have an election. And again, what does the left focus on? Get rid of Netanyahu. This war will be over. Everybody will go back to peace. Everything will be good. Once again, nonsensical lies. Garbage. Gobbledygook. Imagine, if you will, 4 people were kidnapped. And the police in a civilian neighborhood. And you're sitting here going, hey, listen, David, you can't blame the civilians. It's the criminal who brought him in here. You got to do your utmost to save civilian lives. And the police will go in, no problem. But the moment the criminals fire at the police, what are the police supposed to do? Sit back, watch, pretend it didn't happen? No, they fire back. And unfortunately, that's when casualties occur. But what we do is, instead of looking at the facts and looking at them in a more rational way, Israel. It It has to be the Jew killing a Palestinian. It must be right. If not 100, if not 200, it must be 1,000. The exaggerations are off the chart. And when Mehdi Hassan, the former MSNBC commentator, and Mark Ruffalo, and politicians and scores of other media are vilifying Israel, the BBC, in an awful interview, only wants to focus on the Palestinian lives, not the fact that Hamas had taken them, not that Hamas had put them in civilian homes, not that it was an Al Jazeera journalist, not that the Palestinians should have just. We're going to focus on Israel's supposed massacre. I use the word supposed, and that's all that matters. That's all they want to focus on. That's all they want to hear. These talking heads have turned this war upside down. These talking heads and lefty politicians have done everything in their power to discredit Israel, to further their own cause, to further their own agendas, not to help Israel. Imagine, if you will, in your countries, imagine, if you will, Justin Trudeau saying to the entire country, you know what? We're not going to care for hostages or people who were killed. Who cares? That would never happen. Biden, Trump, Obama, Clinton, Bush's, you name any president, there was always a rescue mission. There was always some form of retaliation. There was always something to help bring back our people. And the casualties were casualties of war, not the responsibility of the US, the UK, whatever Western country, except Israel. The left wants Israel to just lay down their arms and be beaten up, swept away, taken away. We saw over the weekend, if in case you missed it, several posts of real desires by these so-called Palestinian protesters of a one-state solution, the elimination of Jews, the eradication of the Jew, the Zionist. It's a virus in the Middle East. That's what they call it. It's not about a peaceful solution. It's not about a two-state solution. It's all about getting rid of Jews and eliminating them completely. Basically finishing Hitler's final solution. Not going to happen. Israel's not going to stand or sit for a government official that wants to quit for his own political benefit. Israel's not going to stop until all of the remaining hostages have been returned. There are being declared dead at this point. That means there's still about 80 live hostages or so. We want them home. The families want closure. If they're dead, and the families like Noel Mogi, who got to go home and see her dying mother before, she succumbed. She hasn't succumbed yet. One of the rescued soldiers, unfortunately, his father died the day he was rescued. Never got to see his father again. These families will never be the same thanks to October 7th. Israel's never going to be the same since October the 7th. And to the world, it doesn't matter. Israel deserves its punishment. Israel's in the wrong. Jews should suffer and perish. To the Mark Ruffalos, the Mehdi Hassans, and the many, many, many out there who believe that, let me quote someone I heard in Montreal early on in this conflict, who to the entire crowd and said, if that's what you believe in, fuck you. We ain't going anywhere. You don't like it? There ain't thing one you're going to do to change our minds. To the remaining 120 hostages, we continue to pray for their immediate return. Pressure governments, demand governments to intervene, to continue to force Hamas to return the hostages. When all the hostages are returned home, conversations of cessation of these hostilities will begin, but not before. And again, I don't care what protests, comments you try to pull out on social media or the TV. I don't care. There ain't thing one you're going to do about it. That's it for today's rant. I hope you found something in today's dialogue. We're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern is when we broadcast. Engage us on social media. Share your perspectives, and we genuinely appreciate your feedback. And until next time on Friday. Don't be quiet. Be loud.